Hey everyone. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I am Katie. Finally, joined by both Chris and John, all in one place. We got the band back together. They high-fived. It's an exciting day. Just in time for us to go on a 3-week hiatus after this.
On wonderful conferences. Get ready for Rubber Chicken Dinner tour.
Yep. Chris and I it's event season, as many marketers know, but that is not what the show is about today. Today, we are talking about generative AI for content personalization. We as marketers, we're always trying to make things personalized for our audience. And obviously that opens up a big Pandora's box of who is the audience? What do they want? When do they want it? How do they want it? Are we doing it? Do we do that? So there's a lot of things to tackle. So Chris, welcome back. Where would you like to start?
Thank you. It is good to be back. I briefly caught a tiny snippet of last week's show while I was laying on the floor in LAX trying to get home. So
that is a story for another show.
That is a story for another, or at the bar at one of the many events coming up. So if you're going to be at many events, come say hi to us. We do not bite unless requested. Content personalization is all about taking content and making it personal to someone, right? Say, instead of saying, here's a generic piece of content, a blog post, a podcast, a white paper, etc., saying this is the idea you want to convey is this is a piece of content that was made for you, Katie, or for you, John, or for you who's watching this. Now, the first place we need to start is huge surprise. Why? Why would you even want to do this? Why is content personalization a good idea? That was not rhetorical.
No, I know. It's funny. Total side note, my brain is sort of ping-ponging today because I have a lot of things that I'm working on. For those of you who don't know, I don't always answer questions immediately. I always take like a second to think about it. And so whenever I watch Jeopardy, I'm like, I know the answer, but you got to give me 30 more seconds. And that's just not how that show works. And unfortunately, we don't have that format here either. So let me go back to the point. That was my way of giving myself a little bit of time to get to the answer. See, that was pretty clever. Why do we want to do personalization? Well, it's interesting. In this day and age, which is one of those phrases that we like to use, in this day and age, with all of the different ways that people can consume information, there is an expectation of personalization. So if we as marketers are capturing data about our customers, if we're asking them to give us information, then the expectation in trade is that, well, if I'm giving you information, then you're going to give me exactly what it is that I need, not some generic piece of content that really doesn't address any of my pain points. And so it's marketers struggling to meet the expectations of their customers. And the bigger the company, the harder that is, because you have such a broad spectrum of types of customers. And so gone are the days where having the generic personas are acceptable of, well, they are a male who lives in the Northeast, who's between the ages of 40 and 50. That's not good enough anymore.
This is the reason we have such a problem with personalization in marketing. These lovely black mirrors. On these devices, we have gotten so used to not only instant gratification, but personal service and deliveries catering to our every need. You want a date, a car, a bottle of wine, whatever. You swipe on something and something happens and mysteriously somehow it shows up at your house or place of residence. And that expectation as consumers bleeds over into everything else in life to say, like, I expect my marketing to be just what I want right now. And the reality is, for those of us, particularly like John and I, who have been in the MarTech space before it was called MarTech, yeah, those systems are not up to that challenge. I mean, John, you've been in the MarTech space just as long as me. How long have you been trying personalization?
Oh, one-to-one marketing, Peppers and Rogers. What was that? It was in like 1997. They were like, this is the future. And here we are 30 years later, and it's still not being done everywhere. Yeah, there's a bunch of problems with that. I mean, one is that it doesn't scale, right? I mean, that's just what it is. If every person has a bag of unique characteristics, each person you add to the pile makes it worse. But the important thing, though, is that personalization, right? It's an expression of empathy. You're showing that you know the audience and what they're doing. And what happens is that always cuts the line when it comes to attracting attention. If you can prove that you know something specific about that person. Like a great example is I have to email this guy today who is, a very popular speaker, and he to get through his inbox is a challenge. But I know that he has canoed his whole life, and canoeing has nothing to do with his business. So when I send him a subject line in an email of canoe, that's going to get read no matter what happens today. And so those kinds of things you can garner attention, you can cut through the clutter if you can get personalization right. But yeah, marketers have been lying about being able to how to do this for decades and still not delivering. So
what do you mean? Hello, first name is not personalization?
I know. Or like hello with that weird space and a comma too, because they hey friend.
Which brings us to the first point on personalization, which is in order to do personalization, you kind of need the data. You need data that can provide personalization. If you don't have the data, you can't personalize it. Now, I would say there's like 3 tranches of personalization, right? There's none at all. It's like, here's the content. Good luck. There is sort of aggregate, which is where things like an ideal customer profile comes in, where you would say, hey, this content is made for CMOs at mid-size enterprises. This content is made for people who have supervisory authority over 50 or more direct reports. And then there is personalization of this is made for you, Katie Robert, and only for you. No one else will have exactly this kind of thing. What John was saying, which was 100% correct. Up until recently, the ability to do tranche 3, literal individual personalization, anything more than high first name, it was impossible because we simply did not have the tools to be able to remix content in an effective and intelligent way. I mean, Katie, you and I have been working on natural language processing really since 2014 when we were at our previous company.
Yeah, and even that has its limitations because so here's what's interesting. We as marketers, even though, so Chris, you held up your phone to sort of demonstrate, the expectations, we're still only limited to the amount of information we can get, so we can scrape a social media platform for conversations. But if our customer base isn't active on social, then it's not helpful. If our customer base, isn't someone who's going to order a lot of things online, it isn't helpful. We probably have a decent amount of customers who don't do a lot of their life, whatever it is, online. And the only way to get to that is to talk to those people one-to-one. But that's, as John mentioned, it's not scalable, especially for a small business. It's really difficult. And so, we're firmly stuck in the aggregate broad strokes, kind of hopefully coming close to addressing the majority of our customers' general pain points kind of personalization. And I don't mean just us, I mean marketers as a whole.
Exactly. So let's talk through how you would implement content personalization using generative AI. First at the aggregate level and then at the personal level. And we'll walk through some live demos of how to do this, and then talk about the upsides and downsides, because it is not without consequences. And I can tell you one of the consequences immediately is what you talked about on this week's Trust Insights podcast, Katie, which is about bias in AI and making assumptions about a person based on things like their gender.
Mm-hmm. It's, it's interesting, just as like a side note. So I recently re-engaged my Lyft account. So Lyft, LYFT for the rideshare. And the first thing that came up was, we made assumptions about your gender based on your name, help us correct this or not. And I was like, that's a really dangerous game to play. Now, granted, I happen to have a very American female presenting name, so it wasn't difficult, but yeah, the bias is real. And I don't think that, a lot of people recognize how deep it could potentially go, but that's a topic for another time.
That's not for another time. And if you'd like to catch the episode where Katie and I talked about it, go to trustinsights.ai/TI podcast. That was Monday's show. All right. So let's go ahead and switch over. We're going to start in our good old friend Google Gemini. And again, as we always say, this applies to any foundation model. So if you want to use Anthropic Claude, if you want to use ChatGPT, all of it's totally fine. And we're going to start with our basic first step in the Trust Insights pair framework, which you can get at trustinsights.ai/pair. We're going to ask the model what it knows about content personalization. This step, of course, it pre-populates the language model's working memory with all the information about, in this case, content personalization. So we want to say, what do you know about it? What are the good things? What are the bad things? What are the things you think are true but are actually false? What are the things that are false but actually true? And so on and so forth. This is our first step to load up the model with context, with knowledge, and for us to also validate it just as we look at it going, is this actually correct? Does the model know what it's talking about, or do we have a problem? If you don't do this step and you just dive right into content personalization, you may be working with old knowledge. Now, I've done this a couple of times today already, and this is reasonably up to date. I'm also going to change the output length because we're going to be working on some longer form content. For those who are unfamiliar, there are two versions of every AI language model. There is the consumer version, which you will see in things like Google Gemini, where you have a friendly web app, ChatGPT, and then there are developer versions. It is my personal preference to use the developer version because I have more control over it. You do not need to. It is.
I don't use it personally. While you're pulling that up, Chris, I just want to address, we did get a question. How do you find are the best way to combat that? So in reference to if your customer base is not necessarily online, and so I had said speaking to them one-on-one, it's tricky if they're not in this day and age. If they don't have a strong online presence, you do have to find those other ways. So, direct mail, paper surveys, electronic surveys, phone calls, those kinds of things, like those all still exist. Those are still valid market research tools and techniques that a lot of firms specialize in, and is still, really great for capturing data. So I would definitely not look past the tried and true methods for gathering data.
Yeah, there's so much value in. It sounds weird, but like talking to people, just saying like, what's going on?
It's strange.
It is strange. So my first prompt is we're going to do this for the ICP first. So if you have not caught our previous episodes on building an ICP, you can go get them at trustinsights.ai/YouTube. I've said, let's do some content personalization. First, I'm going to provide you with the ideal customer profile for Trust Insights. This is a text document that Katie and I have put together, which details exactly who we want as a customer. I say, read through the customer profile and respond okay if you have no questions. And let's see, the model says, okay, it has no questions. So now we have step one, all the knowledge about content personalization. Step two, we have the ideal customer profile. Our third step is going to take a piece of content and do some personalization. The content in question is, I'm going to start with this LinkedIn post. Now, this is a post that I wrote. It was me responding to someone's question. It's reasonably technical. It for sure does not address the needs of our ICP because it's just a question about AI. So part of personalization is, can you adapt content to actually fit those needs? So I'm going to go ahead and say our next step will be to adapt this piece of content to suit the needs of our ideal customer profile. You should rewrite it to keep the main ideas of the content and the information in it, but ensure that it is useful and helpful to our ICP. Let's go ahead and load the content now. And this is our example piece here. And let's see what it does. So how your business can leverage AI tools for enhanced data strategies. The rise of generative AI, how AI tools are changing the game, benefits for data-driven business, key implications for your business, the future of AI and data, and so on and so forth. So just at a very quick glance, this has done a decent job of taking what is a fairly technical, not so insightful for the RICP post, and turn it into, hey, here's what this means for you.
And what, we're not unique in the sense that, we're drowning in subject matter expertise and content and ideas and things and assets. Like, we have all of those things. Where we and other companies struggle is to do this exact thing, because we can talk about things in a more general sense. And it's very easy for us to forget, oh, we're not talking about it for our own sake. We're talking about it for the sake of our customers. What do they need to know? And so I'm already like, my wheels are spinning of like, all right, great. So we have a whole lot of stuff that we could actually probably do this for. But, let's get through this first example.
Exactly. Now, this is not good enough. As we've talked about in previous live streams, particularly the live stream we did on automating email marketing, it is not enough to have a piece of AI just rewrite something. That's a bad idea to say, hey, we're done. What we want to do now is we want to understand whether or not this is better. So in that episode of our live stream, we talked about building scoring rubrics. I'm going to say next, I would like you to score the original piece of content and your rewrite using the Trust Insights ICP scoring rubric. And I'm going to paste that in here, which is this gigantic thing that we built in that episode. You can see the scoring rubric is ICP content resonance. Is it relevant to the ICP? Does it the content quality, and is it a good format? Does it have the brand and tone, and so on and so forth? So the original content, let's see, scored 35 out of 100. Totally expected, because it was a LinkedIn post, as me foaming at the mouth. The rewrite came in at an 80. So already we're in better condition. We're going to say great. Now do a refinement of your rewrite to increase the score for the ICP. Now we're going to do another round of revision here. This is taking what was frankly not appropriate piece of content for ICP, revising it, and now revising it again to fit those criteria. Scoring is so important, because just like if you were talking to the intern, to say, hey, is this better? The intern would be like, I don't know. I guess it's better. If you say, here's a scorecard, score this. Now tell me if it's better. The intern's like, okay, I can go down the checklist. Yes, this is better. The tone is better. The benefits are better, and so on and so forth.
Well, and I think it's important to talk about that context too, because, if you said to me on a scale of 1 to 5, is it better? And you said the same thing to John, we're still missing that context. So again, as Chris mentioned, you can go to our trustinsights.ai/YouTube and go to our So What playlist to find out more about building that scoring rubric. It's not just a simple, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, is it better? But it's actually an in-depth analysis with a lot of context of what the scores actually mean. And what I like about that is exactly as you're saying, Chris, it takes that uncertainty out of it, because depending on who you ask, you're going to get a different answer of, is it better?
Exactly. But the machine can make it better with good prompting and an ICP that's thorough. So here we have refined content, unlocking data-driven growth. How enterprise leaders can leverage AI tools for enhanced customer experiences and operational efficiency. So it's got a better introduction now, specific benefits for enterprises like yours, key actions for enterprise leaders, the future is the data-driven growth, and of course, the call to action. Are you ready to explore how AI tools can transform your data strategy? Contact Trust Insights today for a personalized consultation. Go to trustinsights.ai/contact. Sorry, got carried away.
I have a question though. So, it took it from a score of what, 30 to 80.
From 35 to
whatever.
80, and then 80
Okay.
to 95.
Right. No, I understand that. But that's not my question. My question is, how true to the original post is this now? And or, has it changed so much that the integrity of your original post is lost? And would it have just been better to say, this is our ICP. Can you write a post about what AI tools leaders should be thinking about?
So this is, and this is where I have to get out of my own way. This would piss me off because there's an insufficient amount of technical information about that was in the original post. There's a lot of things omitted about like building fluency directly into a model to understand tool calling. But our ICP doesn't care about that. It doesn't help them. And so it retains enough of the concepts like the tool belt idea where a language model can just pick up a tool and use it. But it no longer has things that would make me happy. Now, I am not the ICP. When we look at the details, it says, AI tools can break down data silos. Yes, that is true. It did hallucinate the numbers there. The streamlined operations, AI tools in this context, these are correct statements. API first approach, prioritizing tool integration. These are all correct statements. So the essence of the original post is still there. I would find this deeply unsatisfying. Chances are our ICP would not. So from a content personalization perspective, this is much more personalized for our ideal customer profile.
John and I talked about this a lot on our live stream last week, is that the trap that we as marketers fall into is with that ego, and that it's about us. It's our expertise. It's our experience. And it's really not. Like, we have to provide that information, but if we're writing it for ourselves, whether we realize it or not, we're doing it wrong. And the thing that I really like about using the ICP as the foundation is it takes us and our ego out of the conversation as much as humanly possible. And so obviously, Chris, you would need to be the one to edit this. And I'm sure, knowing you would try to add some of that technical expertise back in. But it's not about, you're absolutely right. It's not about you. It's not about what you want. Nobody cares what you want, Chris. Let's just put it out there. Nobody cares about you. We care about our customers.
Well, it's true. That is in the context of a business, that is and should be the rational ground level truth. If you're not serving your customers, you're doing it wrong.
And unfortunately, that is not how a lot of people operate. Again, whether they realize it or not, they're like, but the business is built around me. I'm the idea person. I'm the thought leader. Nobody cares.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Well, it's that mismatch between, because we've all seen this as marketers, when you're with a senior executive and they want the writing to be right. They want it to be what they want it to be. And what we're pointing out here is the reality that if you find the copy annoying and a little bit below you, that's actually where you want to be. Like, you should not be loving the copy, because if you love the copy, you're missing the audience.
Exactly. So we have essentially built a methodology here for revising the ideal customer profile, a revising piece of content against the ideal customer profile. Now, how do you operationalize this? Because this is a fun exploration, but what we've just done is relatively inefficient. You would not want to do this same exact process, which took us 14 minutes over and over again. Now, granted, it's faster than perhaps rewriting itself, but it's not efficient, right? It is not a clean, good thing to do. So what we would want to do is we would want to convert this into system instructions. System instructions is a way to tell a model, I want you to come up with a recipe, really, for performing this same exact set of tasks over and over again. So I'm going to start off with this starter. I'm going to convert this entire conversation into a prompt to be used with large language models like Google Gemini. Format the prompt as system instructions. The purpose of the prompt is to instruct the LLM to take a piece of content from a user along with a user-provided ideal customer profile, and then follow these steps autonomously. The autonomously part is important. We want the machine to do this for us. We don't want to have to be doing this over and over again. Write a new draft of the content that is personalized towards the ICP. Apply the ICP scoring rubric against the content, both the original and the new draft. Select a winning piece of content based on the score from the rubric. Refine the winner to increase the score. Score the refinement and then present the top scoring piece of content. So those are the 5 steps that we want this thing to do. We want to incorporate everything we've talked about so far about what mistakes to avoid, what expert practitioners. So we are turning this into system instructions now. There's a good chance that we'll have to maybe do some tailoring on this to make it a little more refined. But what we've got here is so far looking pretty good. We have our system instructions. We have our details. There's our ICP scorecard. Now, obviously, you will want to substitute your own. You shouldn't use ours because ours is tailored for our ICP. Well, I mean,
I would say if you are looking for your own ICP, you can go ahead, trustinsights.ai/contact, talk with our very own chief statistician, John Wall, and he can set you up with our ICP building services, because that is something that we do for other people besides just ourselves. And it's funny, Chris, as you were doing this, as you were putting together the system instructions, we're like, wow, this is like my Christmas right now. This is all I want is, SOPs, process, system instructions, repeatability. Like it makes me giddy. I am so happy with this right now.
We're not done yet. But first, a question came in from Richard asking, are we asking it to do too much at once? Ordinarily, I would say yes. However, Gemini in particular is very good at instruction following. And you will note in the way that we're prompting this, we are writing code. And we're not writing it in C++ or Java or Python, but it's code. This is code. This is giving steps in a structured format to the language model to execute, just as you would write a Python script and execute in a Python development environment. And so as long as the model returns results that you actually want, then no, you're not asking it to do much. Where you will run into trouble is, you're running into trouble and asking to do too much is when you execute the system instructions and it doesn't work, right? And it's like, oh, well, I guess I'm asking it to do too much. Now, there used to be a really complicated, hard, setup process for making this into something actual. As of this past week, that's gone. We're going to go over to Google's Gemini, the consumer edition. And you'll notice on the lower left-hand side, there's the Gem Manager. Gems are Google's version of GPTs. So if you use OpenAI's GPTs and built a custom GPT like Katie GPT we talked about in the past, go into Gem Manager. You can see Katie Gem exists here. Sounds better than Katie GPT. Sounds more fancy.
It does.
And I'm going to call this the Trust Insights Content Personalization ICP Gem. Those system instructions that Gemini just manufactured for us, boop, copy paste.
I was not expecting.
Not expecting the magic wand of boop.
Exactly.
And now I have a gem that will perform the exact same task. So say, here is the content and the ICP. I'm going to click into our uploads. I'm going to choose our ICP and our content. Whoops. You do that from the chooser itself. Example content and ICP. And it will start to execute the system instructions that we gave.
Now, is a gem similar to a custom GPT where, so one of the things you can do with a custom GPT is give it some starter questions. And so it'll say like, what do you want to do today? Or, whatever you decide. could you do the same thing here, where the first thing it asks you when you pull up the gem is, can I have your ICP and example content? And sort of like in some ways, you're kind of bypassing, oh, where's the instructions? What am I supposed to be doing?
You would do that in the system instructions itself. So you would say instead of content personalization, step 1, ask the user, hey, what do you want to work on today?
But in this particular instance, we know. So it would say, ask the user for their ICP and their content.
Yes. You could absolutely do that. The thing that you'd want to do is be specific with what questions. Again, essentially it's programming. So you'd want to have those exact instructions up front.
Which is, I mean, that's a really handy thing. And that's sort of the, this to me is, the automated version of an SOP, a standard operating procedure. Because, that's something that, internally we talk about a lot is, do we have a set of instructions so that this is a repeatable task so that you can get the same result, and or somebody who isn't you can pick up the task and run with it. And I'm already, again, sort of earlier where my wheels were spinning, now they're spinning even faster of, we can automate so many of our SOPs to make sure that we're getting prompted for the prerequisites. And then the system instructions picks it up from there. Like, that to me is the epitome of efficiency.
So now this gem using Gemini has done exactly as instructed. It has done the original, it has done the revision, it has done the refinement, and it has spit out this revised piece of content and explained how it did its work. And if I wanted to, so these can't be shared yet. I would imagine that is on the way, but I could put the system instructions into the Trust Insights Google Drive, and then any Trust Insights employee who's using the Gemini workspace can just literally make the gem copy paste the system instructions, and boom, they've got their version. When sharing becomes available, which I expect any day now, then you won't have to worry about things like version control. But this would be level 2 of personalization. Level 1 is none whatsoever. Level 2 is personalizing content against an ICP. Let's talk about personalizing number 3 at level 3 of personalizing for a specific person. Great. Next, we want to personalize a piece of content for a specific individual. I'm going to provide the individual's information. Now, you can use whatever data you've got. It could be from your CRM, could be from LinkedIn, could be from Facebook, it could be from the hellhole formerly known as Twitter. Whatever information you've got, you can put in here. Respond okay if you have no questions. And this time we're going to preload the LinkedIn profile of the Trust Insights CEO.
Oh, hey, that's me. It's people might be wondering, well, what's the use case for this? Think about, having to put together reports or presentations for someone in upper management that maybe you don't know that well. Or let's say you're, doing a new business pitch, but you know who the person is that you're pitching to. Personalizing for that specific person is so important because that's your audience. It's an N of 1. And to really, as John, you were giving the example earlier of, you have to reach out to someone, but you happen to know that he's into canoeing. So you can use that information to personalize to him specifically. But if you then also sent that same email to someone like, Chris, for example, who maybe isn't into canoeing, he'd be like, why is he mentioning canoeing? That doesn't apply to me.
Exactly. So the more information you have about the person, the better, right? So you can see here, I told it to infer the needs, pain points, goals, and motivations of Katie Robert as an ideal customer profile of a single person. So this is now Katie. This is literally, it says, your goals: grow Trust Insights to a leading data and analytics company, drive innovation, empower empower business, promote diversity and inclusion, make a positive impact on business and society, intellectual curiosity, building a successful and sustainable business. I mean, none of these things are incorrect.
No, they're not.
Great. Personalize this article specifically for Katie to address her needs, pain points, goals, and motivations. And now we're going to start with the exact same exact content, my LinkedIn post. So this is what John was talking about at the top of the show. This is true personalization for the N of 1.
Mm-hmm.
So Katie, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. So as CEO of a rapidly growing data analytics company, you're undoubtedly aware of the transformative power of generative AI. But are you fully leveraging its capabilities to scale trust insights, attract top talent, and stay ahead of the curve?
No. I'm guessing that's what they want me to say, because otherwise there would be no content.
Exactly. The evolution of AI tools, what tool handling means for trust insights. Imagine having an AI model that can seamlessly integrate with your existing CRM systems to personalize customer outreach, analyze marketing campaign performance data, or automatically generate reports summarizing key business insights. And then, of course, you can see similar things, but this is tailored specifically to you and your needs. So this is not just the broad generic ICP. This is what you at Trust Insights, how you at Trust Insights might find this information useful.
I can see this being John, get your pencil out. I got some to-dos for you. I can see this being a really powerful sales tool if you are, targeting a specific company or a person, you want to get their attention. Why not create something tailored exactly for them? I mean, I don't know of a better way to get someone's attention than to provide them with things that they actually need.
Yep. Now, suppose you have 100, 200, 300, 1,000 customers, high value customers. And we have our mailing list is what, 280,000. If even 1% of those people are high value prospects, that's 2,800 people that we might want to personalize content for. That's not going to go well for John if he has to copy and paste this 2,800 times, right?
You better get your pencil sharpener out, John.
It's a lot of, Control C, Control V. Here we go.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. Here's where it gets interesting. In the developer version of all the major platforms, there's usually a get code button. And you can take the code and it contains the session so far and the instructions for how to execute it in Python code. You would then work with your IT team, your developer team, to integrate your data store, like your CRM, for example, and this set of prompts to mass generate individual one-to-one personalized content. And then again, with your developers, work that to push that back into the CRM so that it's automatically sent out by emails. That's so today, with today's language models, you can do true one-to-one personalization where it's mixed exactly for that person with two caveats. Number one, you are sending AI output directly to people without a human reviewing it first, which may or may not be okay with you. That's your personal policy. Number two, it is very expensive. When you execute this code loop of having it build these things, you're probably going to rack up a bill of for say 1,000 contacts, about $10. Yeah, it's like, okay, wait, whatever, $10, that's nothing. We spend more on cream cheese for a meeting than that. Yeah, but now do it every day to the same 1,000 people, or do it to 10,000 people or 1,000,000 people. And suddenly that $10 bill gets real big, real fast. So those are the two major caveats with content personalization. If you use generative AI, it can be risky and it can get very pricey very quickly.
Money aside, because obviously we can't afford something like that. We're a small business. So John, you have to put on your carpal tunnel supports and get to copying and pasting. I personally would not be comfortable with sending it directly from AI. Because, even in the example that you gave, Chris, of the content you wrote and then it rewrote to be more aligned with the ICP, you are pointing out where it was hallucinating information. And I think that's something that we tend to overlook. It's like, oh, but it got me 90% of the way there. What's a little hallucination amongst friends? Well, you are working on the information that you have about the individual, and AI is sort of filling in the blanks of the rest. And, my goodness, what happens if it fills in the wrong blank and, you say something incredibly, I don't know, insulting, racist,
Katie, you should go
misogynistic.
shoe shopping.
Right, but exactly, and, on a previous episode, that is the example that it gave. It was like it took my name, inferred my gender, and then assumed some stereotypes about me, which were completely incorrect. Now, again, harmless, quote unquote, harmless stereotypes about shoe shopping. That's why I put it sort of in the air quotes, because it's not actually harmless, because it shouldn't be doing that at all, but that's still going to happen. So that's my little mini soapbox about you still need human intervention. As much as you want to automate this, do not 100% give full autonomy to the AI to say, oh yeah, I don't need to review it. Just go ahead and send it. If you would not do the same with a person, don't do that with your systems. It's silly.
I would say if you do automate it, there is a way, and maybe this is a topic we can cover on another episode someday, of integrating a sensitivity reader into the process, an automated sensitivity reader, which would say, hey, you're going to look for a text that is implicitly or explicitly racist, misogynist, bigoted, whatever, and programmatically return it to the model and say, try again until it passes a sensitivity test rubric. However, that effectively doubles your processing costs, possibly more than doubles, because now you, instead of one language model doing work, you have two, because they are going to act in an adversarial way, and they may go bounce back and forth. You will get safer output at double the cost.
Right. Now we had another question from Richard, which you could probably even, not so much a question, but a statement. You could probably even make it sound like it was coming from a marketing rep rather than a form letter too. One of the things that I know we didn't cover in this episode, but we have in past episodes is, we have, we very quickly showed Katie Gem, Katie GPT, all based on my personal writing. And so we have actually internally created a process where content is rewritten using my tone, my techniques. I still personally, as the human, edit it because I know what I would and wouldn't say, but it gets it farther along. And it very closely resembles the kind of writing that I would put out, the way that I would communicate. So that is another layer into that content personalization is, having it from a specific person on your team, but you have to build those system instructions as well.
Exactly. But to your point, you could include instructions in the gem saying you must also upload the user's writing style. So now we have instructions that say, here's the writing style, here's the ICP, here's the content, here's the scoring rubric, and so on and so forth. You can see that you're building an ecosystem in which the language model is the processor, but is not the originator of the content. It is just the engine to transform it.
It actually would make a lot of sense to revise those system instructions with your brand guidelines, things you do and don't say. I mean, that sort of, again, we didn't cover that in this episode. And, so if you don't have a specific person on your team that you want it to sound like, you could at the very least say, these are our brand guidelines. This is our tone. This is our, mission, vision, values. Like that gets you farther along down the line to make sure you're speaking the way that would be well represented by your brand.
Absolutely. In fact, we have a client that we work for where I write content for them, but then I use their brand guidelines and their writing style guidelines and their brand safety guide. And I say, now you have to clean up my writing so that it conforms strictly to these brand safety guidelines and stuff. And so what comes out, we in our correspondence with the client, they've been like, this is great. This is exactly what we're looking for. Like, yeah, I know, because I told the model to take my original writing, human-led writing, but make it conform to the requirements that it has to be brand safe. So that's content personalization at 3 different levels. Number 1, none at all. Right. Number 2, based on a segment or a persona using generative AI. And that's something that you can scale with things like gems or GPTs. And then number 3 is personalizing to the individual using an agentic approach with code. The more personal you get, the more technically complex the system is going to be, or the more likely it is you're probably going to end up buying an extremely expensive service from a vendor to implement it. But if I would be very cautious about that, because again, AI content going to presumably important customers, if you're taking all this time to personalize, you might want to make sure it's correct.
I would add as sort of my final thought, and something we didn't touch upon at all is personally identifiable information. We are very much skirting, if not, you know, getting into that arena of, as we're trying to personalize for an N of 1, you have to have a decent amount of identifiable information. And so definitely if you're building your own, make sure you understand what PII actually includes. If you're buying software from a vendor, make sure they are clear on data privacy regulations and including that in the software. And if they make you set it up in your own way, again, you can't get around the data privacy aspect of it. The more personalized you want it to be, the more you need to be careful about data privacy.
Exactly. And you can catch more about this on this coming week's Trust Insights podcast episode, Responsible AI Part 3, where Katie and I actually do talk about responsible AI and data privacy. So, John, any final thoughts?
I have to give a shout out to Richard there. He just called out Microsoft Clippy, which, any mention of that as we are far beyond the days of Clippy mail merges, which was the most painful thing I've ever been through in my life. It's funny. I was just thinking about that. I've taken for granted that when I do a merge, it doesn't crash my computer. I don't have to restart every time I'm doing some kind of.
You don't have to reset all your macros.
Yeah, right. And, flush the cache and optimize
Right.
my hard drive so it doesn't light on fire.
Get off my lawn. All right. We will see you all next time. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and our weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.